Hello, everyone. Thanks for being back. So, just to say a couple words, I have with me Bill Bailey, who I think I'm not wrong in calling you a never Trumper. That's a self-applied label, correct? Like, I'm not insulting you with it.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah, I actually wish we could, expand it and call me a never Trumper conservative,
Right.
because there are different breeds, but yeah.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's one of the first things I want to hit on. But just real quick, if you're in the chat, let me make sure, let me know if you can hear both Bill and I. As I said in the lead into this, even if you disagree with Bill, I think it's tremendous, Bill, that you're the exact same personality as me. You like having discussions with people you disagree with. It might sound like we're heated. We really don't dislike each other, even if we disagree with each other. And thank you so much for calling in while you're busy and on the road. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, the first thing I wanted to say, leading on out from our last debate, one of the things that I think you're getting grief for that I don't disagree is, are you secretly a Democrat in disguise? I don't think that at all. I think my impression of you is you're actually saying that you're a real conservative and you don't feel Trump is, but I'll leave you elaborate on that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I was a registered Republican from the time I was 18 years old. I didn't leave the party until 2014 when I saw the party going sort of in the nationalist direction. I have volunteered for a lot of stuff since I exited the Navy in 1992. 93, I actually helped get Newt Gingrich elected by doing phone banking for him. The Republican Revolution of 93, I was 100% behind. I thought the right had momentum and that we were going to finally put the Marxist leftists in their place and bring us back to a constitutional form of government. I mean, I was so pie in the sky at the time that I even thought we were going to repeal the 16th and 17th Amendment. Okay. Since then, I've been involved in the Convention of States, left them because they were too, they just went QAnon. I mean, I have email records of Mark Meckler, who I had direct contact with, and the Convention of States director of the state of California, trying to indoctrinate me into this QAnon crap. Okay, so I'm not a Democrat. I've never voted for a Democrat. I won't vote for a Democrat. I'll just leave it blank.
Okay.
I mean, I brag about and joke about writing in Donald Duck. But the reality is I'll just leave it blank, and I'll vote down the ballot and put as many, incumbent, private citizen incumbents that run small businesses into local city government and as far up the ballot as I can go. I wish people could understand this. I'm a radical constitutionalist.
Right. And then that's
I'm ready. I'm Bernie Sanders ready to overthrow this government and then get behind all the patriots I can find and literally take up arms and restore this government to its original founding. I'm that radical on the right. So I'm a lot like Trump. I'm like you too, very boisterous, in your face. I'll put the fists up. I mean, we can go to blows. I will pick you up off the ground after I knock you out if I can do that.
You probably
and
can't
I will
pick
try to be your best friend at the same time.
I know what you're saying.
This is where I come from.
Yeah, I hear you. So I just wanted people to. I wanted to give you the opportunity to make that clear. That you're not saying you're a Democrat, because I think that's there is a misconception when someone says never Trump. They think that you're either a Democrat or you're like a Bill Kristol type, like kind of neocon that's like, oh, I'm a Mitt Romney never Trumper or something like that, and that's not the case.
The Charlie Sykes and it's funny you bring it up because I listen to the Bulwark. I listen to a lot of stuff, but I listen to Bulwark, and I can't stand the cadence of Charlie Sykes. Mm-hmm. I try to listen to his message and the narrative, and try to avoid listening to his actual cadence. It's obnoxious. He sounds like a freaking a pinhead out of Penn State. I mean, it's just, I can't take it. But
I agree.
I still listen because there's some underlying truths on both sides of every fence, okay? On every side of every fence.
Right, I agree. So let's just get to the heart of our disagreement then. I think that both of us agree there's corruption. You think that the heart of the corruption is the two-party system. I think that that's more of a symptom of what the real corruption is, and that's just, regardless if it's two-party, we see corruption, for example, in UK politics, and there's far more than two parties there. It has to do with establishment people that are running the show that don't represent the voice of normal Americans. Because of that, the reason, just to give you some clarification on why I voted for Donald Trump and why I think he has justified my vote again in 2020. I thought that Donald Trump, being that he was a perceived outsider, just like Bernie Sanders in the 2016 election, both of them, if elected, would force the corruption to be in the total commons. Hey, thank you, Kenneth. To be in the total public. So I think we've seen that in spades. Now, if you watch my channel a lot, I'm not saying, oh, it's because Trump's a genius and he's playing 4D chess. To the contrary, it's happening despite of Trump, because they have such a monopoly on power. They can't afford to leave someone in there that might be against that monopoly. Even if you think that Trump's corrupt, he still was someone that couldn't be trusted by these, what I call the deep state, but call them what you will, the establishment that's running the show. And I think now more than ever, we see the corruption of the FBI has been outed by people in the IG report. We've seen the corruption of the mainstream media that's just blatantly 95% making up stories about Trump, making up this Russia collusion hoax. I think, and I'll leave you answer this, I think that you don't see, you said that you think the FBI is the most innocent, or at least, and obviously you're being hyperbolic there, but I think you believe that they're more innocent than Trump in this, and I think that's a crucial mistake. My feeling is that you're siding with the enemy when you say that.
No. So here's the thing. Who appoints these people like Comey in this? The party system. So when Obama's in there, he puts his cronies in the positions that are going to benefit him. So it rolled over to Trump. Okay, so at first Trump was giving Comey some credibility and stuff till he turned on Trump. Now Trump turns back on him. See, the problem is that's still at the root of the two-party system. I'm not saying that a multiple-party system, like I said last podcast, that we should go back to the Whigs, that there isn't going to be corruption. There's just going to be it's going to be manageable corruption at our end, at the people's end, right?
But why isn't it managed in the UK then, where they have far more than two parties?
Well, but they're not a constitutional government.
Well, that's
true. They don't have a Bill of Rights.
But I just don't see. To me, it just seems arbitrary. Well, if there's only two options, it ensures corruption. But if there's three options, then all of a sudden the corruption's manageable. I disagree.
So hold on a second. So I volunteered, and I've been teaching for almost 5 years now, a liberty class. Okay. And it's really some people call it a constitution class, but it's a liberty class because it involves the Bill of Rights. We talk about the separation of powers, and we are so unique in the fact that we have a Bill of Rights. Sure. Had that not been passed, we would be speaking pretty much a form of Queen's English, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Our own
I just did a video with a
that
great
Bill
guest.
Of Rights, our Bill of Rights is the fish hook that catches that stops the fish from getting away every single time.
I agree.
So our government can't get away from us because of that. And I don't believe. I mean, the Democrats had total power. They could have mooted or even eliminated the Second Amendment. Instead, they passed a socialist health care plan because that's all that they could do. We are blessed in this country to have this Bill of Rights that keeps our system from getting completely out of control. Because I tell you right now, the two-party system would have destroyed us by now if it wasn't for that linchpin on.
Well, I don't disagree with any of that. In fact, let me just say, we're not going to get anywhere, I don't think, arguing what came first, the chicken or the egg. Is it deep state officials, or is it the two-part system allowed them? So let me put it this way. How can you... I don't understand then how you could make a central focus being never Trump. I understand that you, like me, and I know that we don't...
So here, let me try to boil it down, because he was never going to go in there and do anything he said. Okay, I grew up with a dad like this, and I'm just telling you that my dad made me a Republican, but I went further and I made myself an absolute conservative. He doesn't agree. He's more like a Bloomberg. But Bloomberg has his entourage of people that own guns and protect him. But my dad also believes that nobody should have more than 2 or 3 guns.
Okay.
You know, what is that?
Right,
That
that's-
is passing virtual judgment on everybody on what you think they should have.
Okay, but
So that's the Charlie Sykes Republican, right? That's the neocon Republican.
okay.
And what I'm saying is that what I'm saying is that I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out which direction I'm going, and I lost train of thought.
No problem. I get it. You're driving. It's not an easy thing. Let me just put it this way. Like, I will agree that Trump hasn't been as good as he should be on the Second Amendment. He hasn't been as good as he should be on illegal immigration. He's been terrible when it comes to deficit spending. He's been terrible with putting these neocons like John Bolton around him and engage, like when he bombed
hasn't been good
Syria.
on anything. He hasn't fulfilled any of his campaign promises. He was supposed to reform the tax code, not make it another progressive tax code.
But look,
okay?
now look, I think he's done better
when
than.
I saw this coming, and I was telling my Tea Party groups, I ran 4 groups at the time in Southern California, San Diego. Okay, I ran 4 groups. I ran out of the first 3 within weeks.
Right, and that's
of knowing that Trump was coming in. My own Tea Party that I was the president of, literally would have peppered me off the stage with tomatoes because they were. And I think that what has happened is a form of Stockholm syndrome. Is we have people that are voters that don't think as deep as you and I.
right.
And it doesn't matter how many podcasts we put out; they're never going to think as deep as you and I.
Okay.
And others like
Okay,
us.
but-
And so they panic, they freak out, they just go with the guy that sounds more like them, and he's not us. 40+ years of this guy's life, he helped De Blasio get elected. He's Chuck Schumer's best.
Okay.
checkbook
No,
friend.
we have limited time. Again, we agree on some of that. I think Trump's done more to fulfill some of his campaign promises than you. But here's the important point. We both agree that the most important thing is corruption, correct? It's fighting corruption.
I mean, that's a big door, though. I mean,
You think it's ending
my
the two
reality
parties?
is, well, how do you define corruption? Because you think that the FBI on its own is corrupt.
That's right.
I say it's corrupt because of the political system of the two parties that corrupt.
But it doesn't matter which one's first. The point is that it is in itself
Well,
acting.
it does because it does. Here's the thing. Here's why it matters which one's first. Because you need to know where your target is. Where's the root? See, I'm a systems engineer. I run Unix and Linux systems.
Okay.
Every system has a root directory where the operating system is built off of and runs from. Okay. So I look at it in my own binary format, but I don't see things binary. So what I'm saying is that the root of the cause of all this, you can trace it back to the end of the of Lincoln's era. Lincoln was dealing with this, and he even wrote about this a little bit. You know, the founders were right. We shouldn't have a two-party system.
Right.
You know, and
what's the best way to end the
reality is
two-party
that
system?
That's the root.
Okay. What's the best way to end the two-party system?
You know, okay, so like I said on the last podcast, that's where I'm still working it out.
Exactly.
I'm still on the drawing board working this out. I don't know. I don't have a single answer, but I can tell you this. It's going to have to require something extremely radical, and it's going to take a conspiratorial type movement. And what I mean by that, it's going to take a massive Democrat-like socialist style movement. I don't know if it's a long-term thing or if we all agree to just not vote for a candidate in one election cycle and throw the ball back at them, put it in their court, and see what they do.
Okay, so I disagree. I think that it could resort to needing some sort of radical thing like that, but I say all the time that to me it is information warfare. That right now we have people that are woke up and understand there's corruption, and then we have the corrupt establishment. But that's just a small percentage of who America is. The bulk of people are ignorant or indifferent. They just don't take a position on this, and they're not informed. So to me, the best thing we could do to end corruption is to start to hold the corrupt people accountable and to let the masses that don't know there's corruption wake them up to it. How in the world
I
would
don't
voting for someone
totally
like Justin
disagree with-
Amash, and as opposed to Donald
Yeah.
Trump, achieve that goal?
Okay, so here's the thing. So let's add Ted Cruz. Let's add Marco Rubio. Let's add some other names in here that are far more. We could all agree that they're more conservative than Trump.
Sure.
Okay. I think if I would, and you and I are going to agree, I'm going to agree with you on this, that if it's an information warfare and that it's going to take a slow-moving train turning, right, a little bit at a time, then okay, I'm with you. But we've done this for 45 plus years. Okay, we've tried the slow-moving train, and all the Republican Party ever does is turn its back, whether it's Trump, whether it's Bush, whether it's whoever, and they turn their back at us at the conventions, or in the process they stack the deck against us with the lesser of two evil, choice, and we never get a real concern. Now, Ted Cruz, if Ted Cruz were to be the one elected, would we get some, I'm going to use your term, deep state-ish style policies? Absolutely. But would we get a fighter way more on the conservative side of the fence for us? Hell yeah. He would have been way bigger of a fighter for conservatism than Trump has ever.
But again, it comes to a question of triage. I agree with you. For example, Ted Cruz would probably do far better on, say, Second Amendment issues than Donald Trump. I agree with you, right? We're not going to disagree. But is that the most important issue right now? Trump's not decimating the Second Amendment, and when you talk about it will require some kind of radical movement, that is what Trump represented, even if you don't like the man. He represented radical populism on the right. The mere fact that he was elected, we end up seeing like the IG report that showed that the FBI was using unverified opposition research, manufacturing evidence to spy on a president of the United States. And my disagreement with you, just real quick, and then I'll leave you respond. Yep. My issue with you is in our discussion and on Twitter and in our past discussion, you don't believe that's the case. You say, well, there's two sides to the story.
Because your argument keeps going back to the peripheral agencies like the FBI, like, ICE or whatever. It's not, the systemic issue is it's much higher level than that. And I knew that Trump was going to come in and not do anything. He's an opportunist. And there's no such thing as nationalism, populism. That's not what created this country.
No, I disagree.
It was.
I disagree.
No, it wasn't.
Well, I disagree that nationalism's a bad thing. Patriotism is saying, let's look at it in the family sector.
Okay, well, hold on. Let me qualify myself. I'm at my son's baseball game the other night, and when they sang not the national anthem, they recited the Pledge of Allegiance. Uh-huh. Every single time I'm in near tears.
Right.
Okay? So I have nationalism and populism in me, but that's not our form of government. Okay? Our form of government is constitutionalism, and if we don't separate our emotions of nationalism and populism from our form of government, we're going to end up in a pseudo-fascist state.
But that's not necessarily but that's conflating to me what nationalism means. If we look at the family unit just as an example, patriotism would be saying, I love my family the most. Nationalism would be saying, and I will make decisions that benefit my family first and foremost. That's what nationalism is. To me, it is nationalist to follow the Constitution. So it's just a differing of words, but we should have national pride instead of who we're fighting, which are the globalists. The globalist says,
hey, I'm very proud. I'm very prideful. But again, you're talking about a family unit. That's a dictatorship. Okay, that's a king and a queen in charge of pawns called children.
Now,
and our job is to instill independence into their emotional fabric, so that when they become men and women, that they understand the difference between that form of system and a public form of system called independence.
But that independence and self-governance, self-responsibility, that's not exclusive of nationalism. Again, it's just semantics we're arguing. I'm arguing that nationalism the form of nationalism that it should take is following what our constitutional republic was outlined in the Constitution. That's nationalism. The system we currently have is one of globalism. Now, you might not agree with Trump's policies, but it's quite clear that that's at least what his rhetoric was pushing to. And again, what does it, like, just going back real quick to the FBI, you're saying, well, that's just a symptom. Explain to me how a third party, like, say, a Jill Stein, a Gary Johnson, how are they ever going to come into power if we have a corrupt FBI that is literally able to spy on their campaign, to leak information to a corrupt press, to totally devastate their ability? So that's, again, I don't understand why you would be against Trump.
So we're now at a time, and I see things in much of a linear format. Okay, we're at a progression in our timeline in our history where things are now so out of control. And I understand, I get where you're coming from, that they're now controlling our elections through our apparatuses of law enforcement. I mean, the reality is, before it was the FBI, it's been for decades. It's been the Supreme Court. Okay,
Sure.
The unelected black robes, like Mark Levin says. So the reality is that it keeps getting worse. And my problem with Trump is it's getting worse. It's now at a new level with Trump.
But listen,
tariffs and taxes, and they're failing. He's spending $800 million on a fake virus, not a fake virus. I mean, it's a real virus, but it's a fake. It's blown out of proportion, and now it's another reason for them to spend more money.
But look, but again, I think that my fundamental disagreement with you is, I think that you're not focused on, you say it's the corruption that you care about the most, but then your focus shifts to, but Trump's spending more than he could. Why couldn't you take a position more like me, where I'm saying, look, I don't like the deficit spending. I don't like the fact the wall hasn't been built up. In fact, I have more issues with Trump on immigration than just the wall.
Because I don't believe that he's breaking the system down where at the level you think he is. I just don't.
But it doesn't matter. But it's a matter of, is he conscious?
His spending, he said, he promised how many times? No more bills like this. No more $1 trillion bills like this. And he signed a second and then a third. I mean, dude, seriously, come on, man.
But
he's not breaking the, you know what he's doing? He's exposing how fake Mark Levin has been, how fake Rush Limbaugh has been, what a freaking fraud that Glenn Beck has been, because they all got on the same bandwagon and started thumping the Trump, drum.
But
and for what end?
But again, this is
this downward spiral.
The question is, do those things have to do with?
Why couldn't we stop him at the convention? That's what the thing is for.
But again, you're conflating that he's done policies that aren't true conservatism with the idea of corruption. I've made the point from the get-go. It doesn't matter if Trump consciously fought the corruption. In fact, one of the things I criticize his administration most for is that the corruption is now in our face, outed with proof. I could show you dozens of times over the proof of this corruption.
Spend more money, more tariffs.
But that has nothing to do. That has to do with being what you would see bad policy. That doesn't have to do with corruption.
Why isn't the Republican Party in the Senate in charge of impeachment? Why aren't they removing justices from the Supreme Court and at the lower court levels? Come on, they're not even proposing anything at that level.
But again,
they're not doing anything radical.
What's that have to do with Trump? I agree. I argue many times over with the corruption of these people that we elect as Republicans. Again, though, can you name me? You say, well, people have said this. The media has been corrupt in history. Can you name me a point in time in this country's history where the corruption of the media has been so evident than in the past 3 years?
It goes all the way back to the founding when they first started sending out pamphlets. They were bashing each other then. But you know what?
But it wasn't near the extent of what it is now. It just wasn't. It wasn't near the extent of what it is now. And you have to understand.
Well, sure it was. Go back and read them. I'll send you examples. They were calling each other names back then. They were
names. Can you show me an example of when massive federal agencies were used to spy on a presidential campaign and then leak through a propagandist media to do that? Can you show me an example of that ever happening? We consider Watergate a watershed. Just one sec. We consider Watergate a watershed moment in corruption, where we had two bumbling fools from Nixon's campaign go through a hotel looking for papers. The Obama administration used the most powerful investigative agency in the history of the world to spy on his opponent. That then was leaked out through the propagandist media. All of this is 100% confirmed by information you can find publicly right now on the internet. Why is it a bad thing that Trump was elected, even if he didn't
Aaron Burr.
specifically...
Can we go back to Aaron Burr? What did Aaron Burr do?
Well, that was a duel between two people. What does that have to do with...
They disagreed. And Aaron Burr tried to all the way going to the Supreme Court, to go into the justices, trying to get, his viewpoint pushed out. I mean, okay, listen to me. We didn't have federal agencies back in the day of the pamphlets, right? So, it's just like we didn't have laws when they created the idea of impeachment. So that's why it's high crimes and misdemeanors. It's a vague term. But if you read some of the originalists' opinions, they said if somebody runs for office and they give promises and they deliberately disavow their promises and do something opposite, hello, Trump, they can be impeached for that. The people have the right to get these people out of office.
Again, let me try a different tactic. Let me put it this way. Let's say that someone like...
Listen to this. I'm going to give you something even more radical. If the Republican Party were half freaking brain smart, they would have let the damn Democrats fall on their own sword, remove this guy that they didn't like either, let the Democrats fall on that sword, put Pence in there, and at least get some semblance of some, stability.
And that's exactly the problem.
They could have saved themselves.
I think you're fake. I don't know if you're
stupid to do it.
But listen, I don't know if you're doing this intentionally or not, but it's almost as if you're fake with your concern of fighting corruption. Again, you're more concerned with conservative governance than you are with the idea of the system's corrupt. Let me phrase this to you in another way. Let's say that Jill Stein...
It's so vast, it's so massive, you can't just go after one single piece of the corruption. You have to go to the root, dude. I keep saying this. The root is in the parties. The parties are an oligarchy. It's a unibrow system. They're both colluding together.
Then why not? Okay, so then what?
It's the two-party system.
Again, at the establishment level, that's true, but you just admitted, well, the Republicans didn't want Trump. So if it's collusion at the two-party system, I agree with that. You have your Romneys, your McCains, your Jeff Flakes. They wanted Hillary Clinton. You're absolutely right. Yep. Why should we then support removing Trump so that two-party system could get what they actually wanted?
It wasn't, look, because like I said in the last podcast, they didn't want to remove him. The Democrats didn't want to remove him any more than the Republicans because he keeps signing their damn bills. They keep spending the money, and the more money they spend, the more power they have over us, because the less money we have, the less power we have.
Of course the Democrats, but they wanted him removed. For example, when he suggested looking into the corruption that occurred in Ukraine, they immediately filed impeachment. Of course they wanted. Are you really saying that if push came to shove and the Republicans would have said, well, look, we're basically going to abstain. If the Democrats want him removed, we'll remove him. You say the Democrats would have said, no, don't remove Trump?
I think if the Republican Party were a true opposition party, they were real about it, that, like I said, they would have let the Democrats go all the way. And push this guy to removal impeachment, not just impeached out of the House, okay? And they would have they would have shown the deck of cards of the left. But that's not what they wanted to do any more than the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, wanted him out of office.
Yes, they did. If they had the votes, they would have impeached him. It is clear that they are trying to criminalize looking into corruption from the establishment.
Why did the Republicans play right in their damn hands and just acquit him without any hearings?
See, you're making my point why we should support Trump.
No, you're making my point.
No, I'm not, because your argument is the Republicans hate Trump, but it's the two-party system that's the problem. Therefore, we should impeach Trump and go back to just the original two parties that we had before Trump came along.
You're not following me. It is the true collusion. The true collusion is this fake two-party system. It's not a real opposition left, opposition right. They don't really oppose each other.
So then, let's say that you get nominated as for president of the Republican Party. You should, and you say, I want to bring down this two-party system. If the Republicans are really noble opposition, they'll allow you to be removed from office. That's the best way to fight the corruption. How much sense
does this make? Let's take your scenario, because that's what this topic is, right? Who would I elect?
Yeah.
I'm going to elect myself.
Okay.
You're going to elect me. I'm now president.
Okay.
I'm as boisterous, I'm as in your face as any Trump, but I believe I'm doing it with real truth and conservatism and constitutionalism.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, so then
The
real
first
briefly,
thing I would do is I would clean. Hold on.
Okay.
The first thing I would do is I would clean house in my party. You don't come in here with your fake conservatism, Mitt Romney. You're also a fake LDS member too, because you passed an abortion bill law attached to your stupid healthcare law in Massachusetts. So you're gone. I don't want you. And there's no way in hell I'd be out campaigning like Trump did for a bunch of freaking fake conservatives.
Okay, and meanwhile, day one. Now listen. Okay, all great. You'd be the world's best conservative. I could even concede that.
No. I would clean house.
Okay, but listen, you can't
purify my party.
Okay, listen, but listen. But it turns out you were being spied on while you were running your campaign. And there's immediately an independent counselor that starts investigating you because we think you're colluding with Russia. Now, how are you going to clean house?
Okay,
Every time. No, wait. I let you talk. As soon as you start to clean house, that's used as evidence. Oh, see, you're really a stooge for Vladimir Putin. And then you yourself would say, well, hey, the FBI can't be corrupt. It can't go that endemic. It can't be that severe. So we just have to leave the investigation play out.
Like
then you get removed from office. Now, what good did you do again?
I wouldn't be removed from office because here's like a bull in a china shop. Here's what I would do that Trump claimed he was going to do. And I'm going to do my best Trump impersonation.
Go for it.
You're fired. You're fired.
He can't.
Goodbye.
How are you going to fire the Senate?
No. The apparatuses that you say are deep state, the FBI, I'd get rid of all the goons.
He fired Comey with Rod Rosenstein recommended that he fired Comey. Every single Democrat said Comey shouldn't have that position. As soon as Trump fired Comey, it started a special counsel into him.
Admitting that he worked with Russia.
Who admitted they worked with Russia?
Trump did.
No,
He's on Twitter admitting.
What are you talking about? It's a lie. Mueller came to the conclusion that not one American, including Trump or anyone on his team, illegally did anything influencing the 2016 election with Russia. That's the Democrats guy admitted that.
You asked the topic of this discussion was who's the single person. I just gave myself up. I just put myself in there. I told you what I would do. Trump didn't do any of this.
He tried. He did. The very first thing you did, you said you would do is fire people. He fired James Comey, which prompted a special counsel investigation into him. Had he fired Mueller, which he probably should have because it was a sham investigation, he would have been impeached and removed from office. Now, how is it going to be any different when it's you?
No. See, a bully can't fear people. What a real man does is he makes people fear him because he's actually doing something. I would have kept firing people.
Your bravado would have you're not a dictator. You could how are you going to fire when Republicans, you actually had Republicans in the Senate saying, listen, you had Republicans in the Senate saying if he would have fired Mueller, they would have removed him. So what? You're just because you're a big man, they won't remove you? You can't fire people in the Senate. That's not. You say you're against the dictatorship.
If I came in with the serious attitude that Trump claimed he had, I would have actually followed through and did it. He hasn't. He didn't do that.
I'm telling you, the problem is until the corruption is dealt with, a mentality like yours would be impossible to achieve. You're literally defending groups like the FBI that would quite literally make what your goals as president be to accomplish impossible.
Hold on a second. I'm not defending the FBI.
You said they were more innocent.
I think that at this point, I think that what they are somewhat, I didn't say total, are somewhat innocent bystanders in a political system that is manipulating them and using them to manipulate their side of the system, the elected side of the system. Okay. What you and I absolutely agree on is the level of corruption is so outrageous, so out of control. It's just, I think our difference is how we're going to go about this. You asked me to come on here and talk about who I would elect to fix this corruption.
Yes.
I'm giving you the scenario, and you don't like that either.
No, it's not that. It's you've given your answer, and I've told you why your answer won't work. That's part of. That's germane to the topic.
What you have is a circular argument.
No.
Your argument is circular. It's not linear. I told you I work in a linear format, not in a circular.
The linear argument is until you deal with the corruption, you can't take the steps that you're suggesting. A has to come before B. You have to out the corruption and have the people understand there is. I mean, your argument seems to literally be Trump's a dictator, but he's not a dictator enough.
You're acting as if 60 plus years nobody knows that we're corrupt. All of a sudden, it took Trump to show we're corrupt.
On Twitter, listen, on Twitter and on my discussions with you on these channels, I literally had to outline to you the corruption that you didn't believe because you didn't read the IG report. So, yes, there are people that aren't woke up to it.
I finished it last week. I said that when our podcast, after the podcast, I went back and I reread the sections that I skipped over.
Okay.
The reality is, all it does for me is prove what we've known for 80 plus freaking years,
but
man.
See, and again, you keep talking. Now, who's talking circular? So here's some things you've said. Well, we all know there's corruption, so no need to.
I'm reiterating the circular argument that you keep talking about.
You're saying,
all I'm saying is it doesn't change.
Here's some arguments you've made. We all knew there was corruption, so no need to out the corruption. And I don't like Trump because he's a dictator, but he should have been more of a dictator and fired everyone.
There's a need to out the corruption, but when you got a jerk off that was a freaking Democrat for over 40 years of his life, trying to run as an independent with Ross Perot, the guy's a phony bastard. He wasn't even a Republican. His damn daughter and son-in-law just became Republicans. This is a fake, dude.
Right. So then you're arguing you don't think.
But
listen,
you're asking for a guy that was your enemy for your whole life to now out the enemy. Dude, how insane is that?
Okay, again, back to the point I was going to make earlier. I don't agree with the policies of Jill Stein at all. Okay? Jill Stein's a third-party candidate. If Jill Stein came in and said, I'm immediately going to try to bust up the CIA and the FBI, and I'm going to hold the people account that were corrupt and spying on the President of the United States and Donald Trump, that put their finger on the scales and tried to influence who wins elections, I would vote for Jill Stein over a traditional Republican or Democrat. That's despite me hating her policies. Now, your argument seems to be, yes, the corruption's the first thing I dealt with, but I wouldn't vote for Jill Stein because she's not a real conservative. Even though she's third party, she's not a real conservative, so I wouldn't vote for that third party.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, so you would vote for her.
Justin Amash is not a real conservative. He's a libertarian. And you know what libertarians are? They want their freaking cake and eat it too. They say they're socially liberal and fiscally conservative. That's a freaking oxymoron, man.
Okay, but I feel like you're
socially liberal. Your money still goes away when you're a social liberal. So how are you a fiscal conservative?
But again, you're just making points that say that they're not conservative to your liking, which is fine, absolutely. And again, we agree on a lot of those points. But again, you're losing the central focus of, you say I'm talking circular. I'm not. I'm talking linear. I say this all the time on my show. I don't care what
you're repeating the circular argument of the system.
Listen, it doesn't matter what your issue is. Is your issue Second Amendment? Is it First Amendment? Is your issue fiscal conservatism? Is your issue pro-choice? Is your issue pro-life? Is it climate change? None of it matters as long as this corruption exists. If there are corrupt people that could make the voices of normal Americans irrelevant, then the issue doesn't matter. All that matters is what those corrupt people running the show want to talk about and want their issues to be.
Okay, so here's why I joined the Convention of States, because the restoration of power back to the people will give us more leverage over the corruption. If we don't have control over the corruption, and that includes having being more say on who is going to be impeached and who isn't going to be impeached, than some party, right? Okay. So if we're going to get back control of the system, then again, Convention of States was a radical move. Amend the Constitution through the states.
Right, I agree with that.
Abolish the 16th Amendment and the 17th Amendment. The 17th Amendment, after all my studies, after about 20 years of study, is the linchpin. I would actually keep the 16th over the 17th, because what happened is that we lost our control over who represents our states in the Senate. They get elected, and they're now in an embedded faction, okay, of their own. And we can't go to our local congressman and say, hey, we want this person out. You unappoint this person out of the Senate because they're not representing our state. That I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail. I had to pull over to the side of the road to think here.
No problem.
We got a little heated. So that in itself, if you read the rationale of our founders of why the 17th, if you read the arguments for the 17th Amendment, it's the exact same argument against ever making the 17th Amendment.
Okay.
It's all about corruption. It was all about corruption.
Again,
and
that seems to be. Even if I agree with you in that,
my radical solution is a president that is gonna be an actual bull in a china shop, not a fake one, not a TV reality show host clown, carnival barker, an actual bull in a china shop that's going out and buddying up with the Mark Levins or the Mark Mecklers that are starting these initiatives, instead of just using them as adjunct, money funders for some nationalist, pseudo-socialist, movement. I'm sick of the movements. We've turned into a banana republic style government with fake movements.
I mean,
we've tried to adopt the left stuff, and we've just turned into the left.
But listen, to me, these are just platitudes. It's like saying we should govern with
Not
love.
Platitudes. Come on,
listen, I'm
it's
not
pretty
saying
clear.
that I disagree with you, though. Yes, I agree with these,
Yeah.
but you have to have a realistic plan for how to get there. Saying, oh, we all know about the corruption, and therefore a president that by his mere existence has made this corruption public in a way that it's never been. I'm going to be against him vehemently because we all knew about the corruption, and I don't think he's conservative enough for me. It makes no sense.
Quit generalizing what I'm saying. Come on, man. Let's have a deeper conversation here. That's not what I'm saying. You're generalizing, and you do this quite a bit, it seems. But I'm not. What I'm saying is I'm trying to keep this simple and straightforward and to the point. I don't want to go into a bunch of detail. My point is that if you're going to elect a guy that's claiming to come in and upset the apple cart, I'm not disagreeing that Trump didn't upset the apple cart. I'm just disagreeing that he didn't upset the cart that you think he upset it. I'm saying he's exposing the people that claim to be constitutionalist, radical, ready to go, toe to toe. They weren't. They're not.
Even if I agree with you there, then still the fact that he's exposed them. Why are you never Trump again?
Because he's not genuine. He's not even being honest about it. He doesn't go all the way. He talks a big game. He doesn't act a big game. There's a difference between talking and doing, and he's not doing what you think he's doing.
Okay, so
you think his talk is all that's necessary. Well, okay, some talk will expose some reality. But if he's not going to fire people, if he's not going to actually go and push and veto and do stuff that's actionable, then he's just a bullshit artist.
Now you're making points that make sense that don't have to do with his conservatism. These are points that are in reality that are germane to the topic.
Yeah.
If you watch my show, I think as well as anyone in the country, been screaming my head off about seeing corrupt officials like James Comey, John Brennan, Clapper, all of these people that lied to Congress. Now we see that there is a standard that's been put in place that if you lie to Congress and you're connected to Trump, then you go to solitary confinement, then you get arrested. But when we see proven lies from people like Comey, Clapper, Hillary Clinton, Mills, Abedin, etc., it turns out that the application of the law is applied unequally. And I've said over and over that regardless if it's because Trump doesn't have the nerve or the skill for it, or because he appointed people like Barr or like Jeff Sessions that were incompetent or corrupt, if these people are not held to account, then nothing will matter that Trump's done. That's basically the linchpin of my show. However, that doesn't make me a never Trumper. That doesn't mean that I'm saying that all of a sudden that we shouldn't vote for him in 2020 or it was a mistake to vote in 2016. To the contrary, it outed this corruption. And again, I fall back to this. You seem to be downplaying the act. I mean, for God's sakes, name me one other time in history that the premier law enforcement agency of the country spied on a candidate for presidency of the United States and manufactured evidence to do so.
Well, okay, so where we agree and then separate is you think that a guy just saying things is enough to out corruption.
No, that's
but
not what I'm.
doing
If I can
anything
explain
about
real quick,
stopping it.
if I can, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the mere fact that he was seen as an outsider forced them to out themselves as corrupt.
And this is where I disagree. He's not. He's nowhere near an outsider. He was an outside insider, filling up the swamp with his own money, putting de Blasio and Chuck Schumer in power, and Hillary Clinton, playing golf for over 20 years with Bill Clinton, supporting Bill Clinton against Monica Lewinsky. Do you realize
why did they spy on him?
Do you realize that the impeachment against Bill Clinton was far less egregious than what Trump did? I mean, is that even a reality in you?
No, Trump didn't do anything to warrant impeachment. He correctly, as the chief
Okay,
law.
well, he did.
What did he do?
So
Let's
this is
talk
where we
about
disagree.
impeachment. What did he do that was worthy of impeachment or an impeachment investigation?
I am actually like 20 minutes past where I have to go. I'm already at my destination, so
We can have the conversation some other time. No, I think you're absolutely wrong on that point, but we can continue the conversation. And I really did appreciate it. I really did. And again, although we got heated, I don't think we dislike each other. I think we agree on a lot of conservative principles. So I really do thank you for calling in. Did you want to say anything in closing?
No, yeah. I mean, just real quick. I mean, I really appreciate you having me on here because there's no way Glenn Beck was letting me on the show. I've called in. There's no way, Steve Deace was letting me on a show. I couldn't get on anybody else's show. So, you know what? I give you all the credit in the world for letting, somebody like myself on your show to try to make my case of why I'm a never Trumper. I'm a never Trumper for I think obvious reasons, but apparently they're not that obvious. So, I mean, I would love to come back on maybe
Sure.
on a where I can be in my own little booth and have my and sit so we can talk at length.
Yeah. So I'll just say
I think we need to spend more time talking also because I get heated and I get pissed off and I'm Irish, German, so my emotions get the best of me too. So let's do this again. I really, like I said, I think you got a great show. I'm going to start tuning into your show.
Sure.
I'm gonna subscribe to your podcast. And I'll take notes, and then we'll reconvene at a more convenient time.
Okay, and yeah, just real quick before I let you go, Twitter's tough for me because as hard as it is to have this conversation now in 40 minutes, Twitter's way worse with 200 words. So I often, if I'm not responding to you on Twitter, it's not because I'm mad at you. It's just, you know how it is. And yeah, absolutely. The best times to do a show like this with me would usually be Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, but I'll certainly email and I'll get in touch with you. And again, I thank you so much for your time.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right. I'll stay on here for a second with you all. I think he's off now, but yeah, I thought that was a good guess. It's more fun to have people that disagree. Look, maybe it's not fair that I'll get to summarize and he won't, but I don't care. It's my show. I think that the problem with him, I don't disagree with him a lot of the conservative things, and I think that there's a point to be had that you could get too trusting of an individual such as Trump and say, oh, he could do no wrong. I hope that it comes through in my show that I don't do that. I call Trump out for stuff all the time. I was in the little video right before this, if you tuned into that. But I think that where he goes off the rails for me is he doesn't understand that he's not singularly focused. I have an issue. If I think that the corruption exists, then I articulate, I think clearly how that means that all of these other issues, whether you be on the left or the right, don't matter as much. Whereas I think he's yeah, corruption's the issue. But can you believe Trump spent more than he should have? Can you believe that actually he governs like a Democrat or governs like a liberal? But those aren't questions of corruption. That's just saying you don't like the guy. And again, that's what I was trying to get to with this Jill Stein example. Well, would you vote for someone who's basically the antithesis of a conservative if they were about breaking up the two-party system? And I didn't get a clear answer for him. But if his big issue is every problem's because of the two-party system, okay, would you vote for the Socialist Party? That's a third party. Well, no, because I don't like the way their policies. Okay, so then you're admitting that there are things that you're worth having the corruption for. If it would mean, and for me, I feel the exact opposite. That's why I said my dream election in 2016 would be Bernie versus Trump, because at that time, I mistakenly believed that Bernie was someone that the establishment didn't want. And he was at the time. I guess that wasn't a mistake. But he spent 4 years sucking up to them and doing everything he can to show, I enjoy my lake house, don't worry, I'll play ball. The question of is Trump corrupt? Is he part of the establishment? It doesn't matter if he is or not. I don't think he is, and I could give reasons why. But all that matters is they thought that they possibly couldn't control him. And that's why there was such a vigor to take him out or to stop him being elected. Why else would they have started spying on him? Like, what, I don't understand. What's Bill's explanation? I asked, and it was at the end. He had to run, I understand. So I'm not saying he avoided it, but I didn't get an answer. If he's part of the team, why did they spy on him? And then there's just some things that I just don't understand. Like, if I was elected, I would just fire everyone. You can't just fire Supreme Court justices and senators. And if you just start firing, literally, he says, my problem with Trump was he wasn't fired enough, but then he says there were reasons to impeach Trump. One of those was obstruction of Congress. One of the Mueller things they were looking at was obstruction of justice for firing Comey. So his point, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like he's saying, I don't like Trump because he thinks he's a dictator, but if I was in there, I would really be a dictator and I would fire all these people. Now, he's probably listening saying, that wasn't my point. Maybe not, but that's what I'm getting from it. The 17th Amendment, right? If I'm not mistaken, I believe the 17th Amendment says that a popular vote elects this. Can anyone I could verify now, I guess. But popular vote elects senators. Isn't that what the 17th Amendment's about? There are arguments as to why that's a bad thing that I've heard. And if I try to piece it through in my head, the reason would be if you believe in more of a system of federalism and more of a disconnect to the federal government, then you would prefer that you elect representatives who then appoint the senators. And that would give more of a republic feel than a direct democracy feel. But it's something I would have to really think about. I don't understand how he's saying that's endemic of the corruption, though. I don't get that point. So I'm confused by that. The 16th Amendment, I believe, is income tax, which, clearly that's 1913. The Federal Reserve and the income tax were created at the same time, basically on Christmas Eve. You could read a good book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. Yeah, it's a huge problem. But again, I don't understand. Like, he says it's important that we identify that the corruption started with the two-party system. But again, you could point to other countries that have multi-party systems that are still corrupt in similar ways, such as the UK. He says they don't have a constitution, but I don't get a clear answer why that specifically means that, because we have a constitution, the only chance for corruption is a two-party system. I don't understand why a three-party system couldn't be corrupt as well. The important part's getting the corrupt people out. I think if you do that, you're more likely to have a party system stop to have the consolidation of power that they have. But it's about the corrupt people that are there. If Justin Amash, who pushed the Russia collusion hoax, goes and forms a third party and that party gets into power, I don't see how that all of a sudden alleviates the corruption. If that third party's like, by the way, I'm for bombing Syria. By the way, I'm for going to war in Iraq. Okay, now we have three parties that agree on that stuff. So I don't see how that solves the corruption. It's giving the people a voice that solve corruption. Then things like more parties could resolve as a result of that. I don't understand how he thinks that, well, if I was a true conservative and I was elected, all this stuff would get done, and somehow the corruption at the FBI wouldn't be enough to stop him, or that somehow this idea of the corrupt establishment, I mean, he says things that I agree with, like, the establishment in both sides basically operate as one party. Absolutely agree. I absolutely agree with that. But how would you then saying, I'm going to fire people, stop that? They would just impeach you. And again, it has to do with you. And for something like an impeachment, you have to be able to convince normal Americans that are on the middle that the impeachment's necessary. It's a political process. If Trump would have went in there and just been like, everyone's fired immediately. Everyone. FBI, you're fired. And again, I'm someone who's running on disbanding the FBI and the CIA. That's what I would do if elected. I can't do it unilaterally because I'm not a king, and as I shouldn't be able to do it unilaterally. So that's where I'm coming from. But if Trump just comes in and says, I'm literally firing everyone in a world where he's already being accused of being a stooge for Putin, then yes, it's an easy sell to the average American. This guy's corrupt. He's trying to get rid of everyone because he's a stooge of Vladimir Putin. And then he would be impeached. And that'd be the end of it. And to actually say, somehow to prove they're not corrupt, the Republicans should have allowed Trump to be removed from office, I have no idea what that even means. It's mind-blowing to me. It doesn't make sense to me. So, yeah, it's it's tough. We didn't have a lot of time. And Ian's right. It's something that we need more time to sit through. But again, like he downplays the corruption we see from the FBI, what's happened. He downplays the corruption that we see from establishment Republicans that didn't like Trump. And it seems like he's like, well, because I don't think Trump's a true conservative, therefore he should be removed. But that's different than saying he should be removed for corruption. And that, to me, plays into the corruption. We don't like this guy because he has different ideas than the establishment Republican and Democrat Party. Therefore, he should be removed. But I want third parties and people with different ideas. So, I don't know. Hi, Dangerous Finn. Kenneth, thank you so much for the generous donation. Fantastic. I'm getting close to being able to get a desktop. Maybe I'll have my buddy Tom help me set it up here. Yeah, Tom, that's the way it was before they were appointed by governors of the Senate. I've had people make this argument to me. I have to really hash it through in my head. But the idea is it would be more of a federalist system if you don't have a direct popular vote in each state decide the senators, and instead have a governor or your House Rep members appoint that person. And so you're talking about the dangers of a direct democracy and becoming more of a republic if you have that. But I don't understand, even if there are positive arguments to make there's certainly arguments against it that would be easy to come up with. And I don't understand how that somehow is like the linchpin of corruption. Maybe I'll have him explain why he believes that more, but I just don't understand it. Oh yeah, my buddy Tom's in quarantine, by the way, for the coronavirus because he was in Germany. So, but yeah, thank you for the generous donation, Kenneth. Thank you everyone else for tuning in and for your help. If anyone else donated, I didn't see it, but thank you so much if you did. And if you didn't, what's wrong with you? Do you guys want Russia to win? If you don't donate to me, you're a fan of the two-party system and the corruption. So, hi, wife. My wife's back. I'm done with the debate. I'm wearing these headphones for no reason now because no one's talking to me. My wife is eating pizzelles as we speak. Not those crappy anise-flavored ones, though. Vanilla. Now I don't look like as much of an idiot. So, yeah, I'm going to run today. I got stuff to do with the family. Drink a little beer, paint a little houses. And then my wife's got a Chamber of Commerce dinner, so. But yeah, thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this debate. I think I handled myself well. Maybe I get a little too loud at times, but he gets animated. And by the way, one more time, I want to say credit to Bill. Even if you disagree with him, and I clearly do, he was calling from the car, which isn't easy anyways, to keep your thoughts together when you're driving. I get that. And it was generous of him to give me his time, and I told him, I was like, look, you won't be able to see the chat because you're on the phone, but most people will disagree with you. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm right. You people listen to me a lot and you're on my channel. So just the default is you're probably going to agree with me over him. So I was like, don't get discouraged by that. Say your piece and we'll talk about it. So I think that, there are other things with corruption that we should have talked about, like term limits, which, again, I not only signed a petition that I would vote for term limits, but I would term limit myself if I'm ever elected. I would only run 3 terms in the House. Yeah, the wife, crazy. But, so yeah, it's obviously, there's a lot more to this corruption, but, I still maintain that I disagree with him that everybody knew about this corruption. You might have heard whispers of it, but for the average person to be able to blatantly see how corrupt the media is, how corrupt the academia is, how corrupt Hollywood is, how corrupt Silicon Valley is, see how corrupt the FBI was, I think is amazing, and we should be pointing that evidence out there. And we have the election of Trump. Even if it wasn't him playing 4D chess to get to there, the mere fact that he existed and won forced that corruption to be made public. But you guys know me. I criticize. I say, will it be worth it if none of these people are held criminally accountable? I don't know. So there is some room for agreement there. So Tigger says you're against both of us on the issue. Real quick, why, Tigger? I do have to run, but how are you? How are you against both of us on this issue? There's room for multiple opinions. Right, Tom. If we're not going to have any direct democracy, then we might as well just have oligarchs that vote. Yeah, I don't know, Tom. I don't know what his theory would be on that. I assure you, and I think I talk about corruption more than you would, Tom, but I assure you I've never saw the 17th Amendment as a linchpin of that. So, let's see if Tigger says why he agrees with this. Tigger's voting present. The Tulsi Gabbard. I'm for an impeachment investigation, but I refuse to have an investigation into myself when I talk to Assad for very similar reasons. But I'll vote present, so it's all cool. The Tulsi Gabbard. So, all right. Well, Tigger. Well, I'll wait a second. Maybe you're typing something out. Wife, how was work? I'm in trouble because I said I'd be done before she got off work. Right. Well, that's basically my position, Tigger. It's not that the two-party system's the root of the problem. It's that the people allow corruption in the system. Yeah. That's the point I'm making. Now, the two-party system could be a symptom of that. And if you had the people be more informed and have their voices actually matter, then you would probably see just grassroots-wise parties spring up, because you would say, well, I don't just vote R or D. I vote for the person who I informed myself. I voted for the person that spoke to the issues I like best, and what party they were from didn't matter as much to me. So, yeah, I think that, a two-party system could be part of, well, there was corruption and there was people not being informed, and it led to the formation of that. But, yeah, that's basically what my argument is. His argument seems to be, but the corruption's all from the two-party system, so all we need is a third or a fourth party, and then all of it's solved. I clearly disagree with that. And I think the fact that there is corruption is what would stop a third or fourth party from arising. If they could do that, look what they did to Jill Stein. They did the same Russia crap to Jill Stein as they did to Trump. The Democratic Party and their propagandist media talk about how, Elizabeth Warren's out because of sexism. And, we shouldn't have an electoral college. It should be popular vote, right? That's the argument they're making. Meanwhile, they're 4 superdelegates, and they just changed the rules to keep the only woman left on the stage, Tulsi Gabbard, from being on the debate stage. Now, if they're willing to do something like that to someone that has been a Democrat, is a Democratic senator, how in the world do you think they're going to treat third parties? And regardless if we want to believe it or not, it's effective. That propaganda is effective. So, I do. Tactical Technician says, Rob, you need to go do family time. Okay, I got it. Oh, there she is. Uh-oh. Great. Now I'm going to be watching Marky Mark and Post Malone. All right, I got to go and enjoy this. It's a movie? Yeah. Oh, my goodness. So I got to go watch this Marky Mark Post Malone movie. You see what I sacrifice? Oh, okay. So, again, thank you again, Kenneth. That donation was incredibly generous. It really was. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone. I hope you enjoy this. We're going to have more debates with people I disagree with on here. Maybe Tom, once he's out of quarantine, will come do a debate with me. And we agree on a lot, though. I don't think me and Tom disagree as much as me and that gentleman. But he is a dirty Democrat. But no. By the way, Tom, Courtney changed her registration. She's now a Republican. So one down. 40-something million to go. So, all right. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll talk to you all soon. I'll see you Monday, if nothing else, and have a good one.